All right, welcome back. Episode 4 of the E.O. Smith Sports Talk podcast. We're going to get right into our NFL segment here. So I'm joined by Alex Card, Nolan Klimkowitz, and Leon Lynn. It was a big week 8 in the NFL. So what stood out to Alex?
Yeah, I think it was definitely Seattle's game against the 49ers. That one really stuck out to me. I think the biggest thing that stuck out to me was the defense. I think the 49ers were held to like under 75 rushing yards or something like that. And that's a Kyle Shanahan offense that is focused on running the ball and then throwing it off play action. And I think that was really impressive because that pretty much just sealed the game. Like they were able to shut down the run and the 49ers chances in that game were over. It ended up being like a 37-27 win for Seattle, which is way closer than the game actually was. I know like up until like 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, Seattle was up like, 20 or something like that. And so defense let up some points late, and that was really what made the score look closer than it was. But I think, that was what stuck out to me was that defensive performance. I think they looked a lot better against the 49ers team that is missing injuries, but is still a rushing team.
And a massive headline from that game, obviously, George Kittle fractured his foot. He's out probably 8 weeks. And then Jimmy Garoppolo suffers another high ankle sprain. He could be out 4 to 6 weeks. And if he gets surgery, potentially out for the season. So Nolan, Jimmy Garoppolo obviously hasn't had the success in San Francisco that some expected. Obviously couldn't get it done in the Super Bowl last year. It's his second time being injured this year. He's been benched a few times. How do you see his future in San Francisco?
I mean, this could be his last season in San Francisco. There's some teams obviously looking for a quarterback. I've seen some rumors about the Patriots possibly taking Jimmy Garoppolo back for next season after Cam is done with them. I think right now the future with Jimmy Garoppolo in San Francisco is very iffy, especially with all these injuries. Benched, as you said, twice this season so far, barring injury. I don't know. And then with this 49ers injury bug, I mean, at this point, it might just be time to call it for them. We had talked about the possibility of all 4 teams coming out of the NFC West making the playoffs. I think it's done for the 49ers. These injuries have just been killing them this year. Maybe if they stayed healthy, they would have had a better chance. But, I mean, just losing so many key players, I think it's done after that.
Yeah, I want to quickly review. These are 49ers players who have been placed on IR at some point this year. Jimmy Garoppolo, George Kittle, Tevin Coleman, Raheem Mostert, Deebo Samuel, Dee Ford, Nick Bosa, Solomon Thomas, Richard Sherman, Jalen Hurd, Weston Richburg, their starting center, Kwan Williams, starting cornerback, Ziggy Ansah, who was Nick Bosa's replacement, and Jaquiski Tart, starting safety. With that list, Alex, do you think the 49ers can still contend into the playoffs, into the Super Bowl?
No, definitely not. I think I agree with Nolan. I think their season's done. I think at this point they just say maybe they even trade Jimmy Garoppolo at this point. I think the best course of action if I was the Niners GM would probably be trading Jimmy G, getting what you can for Garoppolo. I know his contract's running out, so maybe trying to get something for like a desperate team, maybe even like the Cowboys go and get Jimmy G. Something like that, and just kind of blow it up and say we're going to try and get a high draft pick and go get like a Trey Lance or a Justin Fields or something like that, maybe a rookie quarterback, because they're definitely in a contending state right now. Obviously, they got a really good defense. They got running backs galore and a really good offensive line to help out with a young QB. So I think that would be what I would do if I was the Niners, would just say, let's blow it up. Let's go get a Trey Lance or a Justin Fields.
All right, Leon, if the 49ers were to do something like Alex said, trade Jimmy G, or if he goes to the Patriots in the offseason, heading into next year, assuming Jimmy G's gone, who is their quarterback next year?
Next year, the quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers will be Dak Prescott. Like I said before, I believe Dak Prescott has played his last game as a QB of the America's team. And I believe Jerry Jones won't pay him, and he's going to go to the 49ers and be the starting QB for the 49ers.
Wow, that's a bold take. I was expecting maybe Matt Ryan. Obviously, a lot of rumors there about the Falcons blowing him up. Alex, who do you think their quarterback is going into next season?
That might be the dumbest thing I've ever heard. I'm sorry.
I can tell the future, so believe that right now. I'm
No,
right down on paper right
that's
now.
completely outrageous. Dak is, I think Dak's a Mississippi kid. Grew up in Mississippi, I think. Played college at Mississippi State. He wants to stay in the South. He wants to stay in Dallas. Dallas is his dream job, being the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys. That might not mean something to you, being somebody from the Northeast, where that doesn't matter. But it's definitely prevalent in definitely in college football.
It's not up to Dak.
And
It's
I
up to
think that's how
Jerry
Dak
Jones.
feels. I think that's how Dak feels, and I think he's going to try and stay in Dallas. Obviously, he wants to get paid, and I think Jerry Jones will pay him, and so I think he'll stay in Dallas. I think what Brendan said about Matt Ryan is interesting, and I think that definitely could be an option for the Niners.
Yep. I want to touch base on another Week 8 game. Actually, a big upset. The LA Rams lose to the Miami Dolphins to his first start. He actually was not impressive at all, but they still got a big win. That defense looked really good. Are they contenders in the weak AFC East?
I mean, they really might be after that game. I mean, I was not expecting that at all. That Dolphins defense looked absolutely fantastic against the Rams. They got to Jared Goff. They forced how many fumbles was it? 2-3 fumbles. A defensive touchdown on the scoop and score. I mean, they looked fantastic in that game. Of course, Tua in his first start wasn't all that impressive, right? One passing touchdown, not a whole lot of passing yards, but I mean, obviously he can build on that. It's his first start. In a weak AFC East Division, I mean, there's a chance that they come out of that with possibly a wild card, maybe even winning that, as the Bills haven't looked all that good lately.
Yep, and they were that was a good result for them, but staying in the AFC East, the Patriots lose to the Bills. Obviously everyone's seen the play by now. Cam Newton rolls out to the left, fumbles the ball. Pats lose by 3 on a late field goal. Leon, the Patriots did not sell at the deadline. They got a receiver from the Dolphins, but they didn't make any major moves. Should they have blown up the team and traded guys like Stephon Gilmore?
Yeah, I thought they should have blown the team and traded Gilmore and some of their stars players for future picks. I believe they have to go to rebuild. Bill Belichick saying that they sold out and won 3 Super Bowls. Maybe it's time to regroup and start rebuilding the team and look towards the future. Because I don't think Cam Newton right now is not the future and doesn't look good for them.
Yep, agreed. Obviously, we expected today to be a busy day with a lot of news, but the NFL deadline was not really headlined by many moves. Quan Alexander to the Saints and Desmond King traded to the Titans were the biggest moves. Not all too significant, but Nolan, the Steelers acquired Avery Williamson, the middle linebacker from the Jets. How do you think that move puts them into contention with the Bucs and the Chiefs and the Titans and teams like that?
I mean, this just strengthens an already really strong Pittsburgh defense. I think this absolutely elevates their team, right? It'll be really hard to put points up against this defense, especially now after acquiring another key player and an already dominant defense, as we've seen this year. One of the best, if not the best, defense in the league. So I think Pittsburgh could be favorites in the AFC. I still think the Chiefs are absolutely the undisputed number 1 in the AFC. But the Steelers on the rise now, obviously still undefeated after last week's game against the Ravens. I think they'll be a tough team to beat going forward. This year they get the Ravens again on Thanksgiving, so we'll see how that game goes. So obviously very strong team there. I think they have a chance to make a deep run into the playoffs this year. I
agree. I think if Avery Williamson can fill in for Devin Bush, as they are obviously trying to replace him there in the middle, that's got to be a top 2 defense with the Bucs. And I actually think they're still favorites over the Chiefs, but we'll see. Another powerhouse in the AFC, the Tennessee Titans lose by 11 points to Joe Burrow's Bengals with a bunch of second-string O-linemen. Obviously, we know the Bengals have not gotten many wins this season. That was their second win. Leon, is that a big loss or just a bad game from the Titans?
I think it's a big loss. The defense didn't look good. The defense did get help by adding in Desmond King, right? Yeah, Desmond King. So the defense did get help, but I think it was a big loss. Like they could have gone 6-1, looked pretty good, but yeah, Ryan Tannehill didn't look good. Derrick Henry was Derrick Henry, and I don't know. It was a big loss, I think.
Agreed.
I think this just shows
sorry.
some of the weaknesses in that Tennessee defense. I mean, they've given up big points the past 3 weeks. Houston, the Steelers, and then now the Bengals, losing in a big game against the Bengals. I mean, the Bengals put up 31 points against them, and that's a Bengals offense that has struggled a little bit this year. So I think that just shows some of the weaknesses in Tennessee's defense. I think this just shows that they're not a real contender coming out of the AFC.
Yep. I want to touch base on one more game from Week 8. The Chicago Bears lost in overtime to the Saints. A lot of people calling for Mitchell Trubisky to become the Bears starter again, bench Nick Foles. Nolan, do you think that's a decision that Matt Nagy should make, or should they stick with Foles and ride him out?
Well, I think at this point you got to stick with Nick Foles. I mean, especially after benching Trubisky earlier this season and saying that Foles is your guy. I mean, obviously the Bears have not looked good these past few weeks. Not at this point right now, they are not real contenders, even after having such a good start to the season. I don't know. I think they definitely stick with Foles, see how he does the rest of this year. Maybe they can squeeze by, get a wild card playoff spot, but not real contenders in the NFC.
Alex, what do you think? Stick with Foles, or go to Trubisky?
Well, I think first off, winning 5 games was the biggest mistake the Bears made this year. I mean, that puts them in maybe you say they win like 2-3 games the rest of the season out. That puts them at like a 7-9 or an 8-8 record when they could have been, I think in actuality, they're kind of like a 5-11, 4-12 team. And so winning those extra games to start the season was a big mistake because they really need a quarterback. Like Nick Foles and Mitchell Trubisky are not the answer. I think you're asking the wrong question here. It doesn't really matter who they start at quarterback. They both aren't the guy going forward, and they both, it's more of like a temporary solution. And so I think the Bears' biggest need is definitely a quarterback. Mitchell Trubisky sucks. Nick Foles sucks. They're both, Nick Foles only had success with the Eagles. And so, like I said, I think you're asking the wrong question here about who should be starting. It's who should be the next quarterback for the Bears, because neither of these guys is the answer.
I agree that neither of them are future quarterbacks, but I think Trubisky gives them the best chance to win with his, scrambling abilities, play action ability. Nick Foles, I believe the team is 2-3 since he's taken over, and 3-0 under Trubisky. They haven't looked good. The offense hasn't gotten going, and despite their pretty good defensive play, they just haven't been able to get wins. That Saints game they should have won. They can't get it done under Nick Foles. I think they should go back to Trubisky. You draft him so high because he has that ability. So
I think the Trubisky draft was, I think everyone can agree that was atrocious in the first place. To take Trubisky that high. I think I disagree with you. I don't think they should start the best quarterback they have. I think they should trade whoever they think is better or whoever they think they can get more value from, whether that be Nick Foles or Mitch Trubisky, and just.
Well, the deadline's passed.
Yeah.
But,
So that's right. Sorry, I forgot about that. So they should, I think, in my opinion, they should start the worst quarterback, the quarterback that they don't like, and let the other guy sit behind him because they can't win any more games. The Bears suck. They need a.
Yeah, but you
Or,
can't.
that might be the dumbest take.
You're gonna lose your locker room. You're contending for a wild card spot in a tight NFC. You have a good defense. You're paying Khalil Mack a ton of money. He's getting up there in age.
NFC. They're not going to do anything. They suck. They need.
But you can't tank when you're 5-3. What are they? 5-2, 5-3. You can't tank.
They've got a good record. They're still contenders in the NFC. You don't give up.
Matt Nagy's fighting for his job right now. Why would he start to tank?
They need a quarterback. That's why. They can't win with who has the roster.
Well, maybe they can go get Jimmy Garoppolo, Matt Ryan, Cam Newton. I mean, clearly they're not going to get a lottery pick. And if they start tanking 5 wins, you never get a lottery pick. The Jets aren't going to win. The Giants aren't going to win more.
Matt Ryan's
all those teams aren't
going
going to win.
Is looked off and on this year for the 49ers. I really think they need to go get a rookie quarterback.
All right. Let's move on. Really quickly, let's talk about Nolan's Giants. They actually they lost to the Buccaneers on Monday Night Football, but a pretty decent result to bring it to the end there. That questionable PI, Nolan, was that pass interference?
Absolutely, it's pass interference. I mean, you can see from the replay. That's a Tom Brady call right there. They just gave that call to Tom Brady. I mean, obviously, all right, Daniel Jones could have thrown a better ball, right? He held on to it too long. The play was there. And if he throws it to the pylon rather than the inside, then you've got yourself a 2-point conversion. But that is absolutely a PI. You don't pick up that penalty. When you throw a flag for a PI, it's because you see a pass interference. You don't pick up that flag afterwards unless you're playing against Tom Brady, right? Tell me not. Tom Brady throws that exact same ball. You're getting the call, okay? But I think the biggest takeaway from that game is my Giants looked so good in that first half, at least. Holding the Buccaneers to just 2 field goals. I mean, come on. I just.
All right,
go ahead.
Leon, real quick, pass interference or not?
Pass interference or not, it doesn't matter. It was going to go overtime anyways, and Tom Brady was going to lead the Bucs down and to score a touchdown. Danny Dimes is awful. He threw like 20 picks that game. It would not have mattered if it was a PI or not.
I agree. I'm with Nolan, actually, that it was pass interference. It was a mistake to pick up their flag. Obviously, they threw the flag because it was pass interference. But at the same time, if you're a Giants fan, I don't think you really want to win that game. Obviously, you don't root to lose, but Daniel Jones proved that he is a terrible quarterback. He will not be their starter next year, I don't believe. I think it's going to be Justin Fields or Trey Lance. Joe Judge looked like a good coach. I mean, he has those guys fighting for him against arguably the best team in the NFL. But for me, if you're a Giants fan, that's actually a good result to play well but still lose. You don't want to win that game. You want draft position. Alex, my question to you is, should the Giants stick with Danny Dimes next year or target someone like Justin Fields or Trey Lance in the
Danny
draft?
Dimes is a terrible nickname. It should be Danny Turnovers. I mean, this guy has led the league in turnovers since he got in. I'm pretty sure if he isn't leading, he's up there. He's a fumble machine. He throws like 5 interceptions a game. This guy's terrible. Yeah, they need to get rid of him as fast as possible, and they need to find any competent QB and stick him in at quarterback. I mean, he's had one good play all season, and that was his run against the Eagles. And I mean, it wasn't even that great because he had a short-handed touchdown. He unathletically tripped over himself and landed at the 10-yard line. So.
All right, Nolan, real quick, should the Giants stick with him or get rid of him?
At this point, Daniel Jones is just done. I mean, he tries to do too much, right? And he's been trying to do too much for 3 seasons now. He just doesn't know when to throw the ball away. He tries to throw it into coverage. He throws interceptions. He fumbles the ball. He's a turnover machine, as Alex was saying. I think it's time to get a high draft pick and go for a quarterback in the draft. If we stick with Daniel Jones, obviously a bad decision.
All right, I want to move on quickly. Week 9 upsets. Alex, make a big upset pick here.
Oh God. I don't know.
All right, Nolan, let's go to you.
Come back to me.
Let's see here.
Nolan's not ready either. Leon,
I got the Panthers over the Chiefs. Christian McCaffrey is going to run all day on that defense. He's going to score at least 5 touchdowns.
All right, let's go back to Nolan. Nolan, you ready?
Give me the Chargers over the Raiders. Justin Herbert leads them to a victory there.
Wow. Alex, what about you?
Give me the Niners over the Packers. I think they get their run game fixed. JaMychal Hasty has a good game. They beat the Packers.
With Nick Mullins at quarterback? Wow. All right, for me, it's going to be my Lions getting a win, getting back to 500 over the Vikings, 4-4. Then I think we have the Washington football team next. We're going to turn around. Still got playoff hopes. Let's go.
Yeah, this kid picks the Lions for his upset every single week. Never going to happen, but
oh yeah, it's going to happen this week.
This is what happened last week.
This week. This is
the
our
Lions are going over the Colts.
Bad luck. It's bad luck.
All right, we're going to wrap that up. Thanks for the insight, boys. Talk next week.
We now move on to our college basketball segment, and a lot to talk about going forward, especially with UConn. A lot of people hoping for a good year from both the men and women for UConn this year. UConn's got a lot of good returning players, a lot of really good recruits coming in. Probably the biggest name that sticks out is James Bouknight. Nolan, what are your thoughts on him?
I mean, obviously last year he had such a good freshman year, and now coming back with a year of experience, a chip on his shoulder after the tournament last year was canceled. He wants to bring home a title for UConn. So this year, of course, he's been surrounded by so many good role players too, with R.J. Cole transferring from Howard, Andre Jackson, the freshman, coming in this year. We've seen improvements this offseason from Isaiah Whaley, Josh Carlton. Is looking really good so far for UConn. Right now, they're projected to finish fourth in the Big East behind Providence, Creighton, and Villanova. I think it'll be a conference to watch this year, and it'll be a good race by the end of the season.
Interesting. So I'm looking at the rankings from Ken Pomeroy. He has UConn basketball slated as the 43rd best team in the country for his preseason rankings. Brennan, do you think that's a fair assessment of UConn going forward? Do you think they should be a little higher, a little lower?
I think UConn should be a little higher, actually. Just looking at Book Knight, Pauly, Gaffney, they've got a good returning core and also some good freshmen, obviously headlined by Andre Jackson. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can bring. And then Adama Sanogo, the 6'9" forward, I guess maybe a center as well. I'm interested to see what they can do. They have R.J. Cole coming in via transfer. A lot of reports saying that he's been looking really good. And just seeing what Danny Hurley can do turning around this program. I think they've got to be in the top 3 of the Big East. I think they can win the Big East, and then I think they're going to make the March Madness and make a run. So we'll see.
Yeah, a lot to think about there. Speaking of Book Knight, I'm looking at it right now. He's on the watch list, the preseason watch list for the Jerry West Award, which goes out to the best shooting guard in college basketball. The list will be narrowed down in January. But, Leon, do you think that's a realistic award for him to win? Do you think he can make that step up and contend for that?
Yeah, it's realistic. James Bouknight is hands down a lottery pick next year in the draft. He will go in the top 15, and he's one of the best guards in the nation. And he's definitely going to win. I think he's going to lead UConn to the March Madness, and we're going to win the national championship this year. We're going to surprise every single team in the country.
All right, let's shift now to women's basketball. So UConn got a really big recruit, Paige Buchers. I think right now she's the projected preseason Big East Freshman of the Year for women's basketball. Brendan, do you think that's something that she can win? And is UConn women the favorite for the title this year?
Yes, I think for both of those, yes. I think they're the title favorite, and I think she's going to be the best player in college basketball despite being a freshman. I think she's going to be that next great UConn women's basketball player. Similar to Breanna Stewart, she has the chance of winning 4 years straight. I really think that she's going to be so impressive, kind of a bigger guard, her passing, her shooting, just her natural ability to score. I think she's got to be one of the best college basketball players heading into the season. And I think she'll carry UConn to win the Big East and potentially the national championship again.
All right, interesting. So you're high on the UConn women for this year?
Yeah.
All right.
Yep.
Let's go back to the men's. Aside from UConn, Gonzaga is the number 1 team in the country in 24/7 Sports for the preseason rankings. Number 2 would be Baylor. Number 3, Villanova. Number 4, Virginia. Do you think that's a fair top 4, Nolan? Do you think those are going to be the 4 1 seeds going into the tournament?
I think these are absolutely good preseason assessments. I mean, all 4 of those teams are always such competitive teams in the nation, right? Gonzaga, we always see making a run. Virginia is looking really good this year, making even more improvements from last year. I do think this is a fair assessment. There were a couple surprises to me in the top 10 this year, with Iowa and Illinois making the preseason top 10. Of course, Luke Garza coming back for Iowa, the senior forward, will be very good for them. But those were a couple surprises I saw coming out of the top 10. I do think that top 4 is very fair and should be accurate at the end of the year.
So I'll pose this question to Leon now. What are your thoughts on that top 4?
Yeah, I think it's accurate. I'm looking at the recruits right now. A lot of the top 4 has big name recruits coming from this year. For example, Jalen Suggs committed to Gonzaga, who was electrifying in high school. So we'll see. I think it's pretty accurate.
All right, and real quick before we head off, little rapid fire here. Brendan, who's your favorite for the national title?
I'm going to go with Duke this year.
How about you, Noel?
I think it's got to be Gonzaga. I think they finally make it there and win one.
Leon?
UCONN!
All right, that'll be enough for college basketball today, and we're going to move on to our next segment now. Thank you. We move now into our European soccer segment, and first we're going to touch on the Champions League. A lot of interesting stories coming out of the Champions League as the group dynamic really starts to take its form. 3 games played, 2 to 3 games played for most groups, the teams in the groups. Sorry. And one of the groups that's sticking out to me right now is Group B, with Borussia Mönchengladbach, Shakhtar Donetsk, Real Madrid, and Inter Milan. Currently, the 2 favorites to reach the round of 16 from this group, Madrid and Inter, are both slated to not move on. Gladbach currently has the lead, and Donetsk is in second. Austin, of course, this has to change, but how do you see Inter and Madrid's poor starts to this Champions League campaign affecting them moving forwards?
Well, I think that, as far as it looks right now, Inter is probably not going to move on. They didn't move on out of the group stage last year. They got bumped into the Europa League. And I just don't think that they quite have what it takes. Real Madrid, though, is a team that needs to get to the round of 16 every year. In the Champions League, they're one of the best teams in the world. They're one of the most historic teams in the world. And when you have a team like that is lacking in quality, I guess as badly as they are right now, I think it causes a bit of a wake-up call, where you need to get yourself in shape and work hard to get where you need to be. Obviously, yesterday, Real Madrid won for the first time in their group, which was good. They were beaten 3-2 by Shakhtar Donetsk, which was a real upset. No one really saw that coming. So, yeah, I don't think Inter will move on, but I think Real Madrid probably have a chance.
So if not Inter for that group, then of Gladbach and Shakhtar, who do you have moving on?
Well, I think Real Madrid's going to move up into that second spot, probably over Shakhtar Donetsk. And, Shakhtar has played well. They've played well as far as, this Champions League has gone. It's just they aren't a team that's going to get very far. I don't think they don't really have the pedigree to show that they're going to get to that high level.
Gotcha. Okay. So if you had to guess, you'd say Gladbach and Madrid would move on from that group.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to another storyline out of Group D, Liverpool, Ajax, Atalanta. Currently, Ajax and Atalanta are tied on points, with Ajax holding the goal differential lead. Atalanta, obviously, the Cinderella run of last year. Ajax, the Cinderella run of 2 years before this. Thaddeus, who do you have moving on from this group? And do you think of those 2 teams, Ajax and Atalanta, one of them could maybe repeat their Cinderella performance and make a run?
Personally, I think the group will end up with Liverpool and Ajax moving on. As we just saw yesterday, Liverpool destroyed Atlanta. It was like 5-0, and with all 3 of their front 3 scoring in 7 minutes. So I think that if Liverpool can figure out how to get their defense together, or really just compensate with their incredible offense, then there's no way they don't make it out of their group. And Ajax has been in great form this season. They had that 13-1, I think, game in the Eredivisie, and otherwise, they've just been playing very well. And as you said, they're at the top of their group, and they're winning the Eredivisie. I don't think I could really see them choking this. So, yeah, I'd put those 2 in the top 2.
Interesting. Okay. Moving now to this year's group of death, Group H, Man United, PSG, and RB Leipzig. Nick, some big matchups today in that group. PSG plays in Leipzig, and Man United face Besiktas. Who do you have moving on from that group? Do you think PSG can finish top of the group? Do you think Man United has it in the bag? What are your general thoughts with this group moving forward?
Honestly, I think we just got to come down to see the results after the games. I mean, PSG is a pretty strong team, but so is Man United. We've seen in the past 2 games that Man United have beaten PSG in late goals, and that's just lack of PSG wanting to lock in those last couple of minutes and who's willing to work hard in those last couple of minutes. So I think it just comes down to who wants it more, either PSG or Man United. And I can't really even pick a side right now.
So only 2 teams can move on. So it sounds like you have PSG and Man United as the 2 teams moving into the group stage.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's shift now to the Premier League. Diogo Jota, I think is how you pronounce his name, or Jota, I'm not really sure. Kind of a surprise signing. Austin, what were your thoughts on his performance? I know he had a really good game for Liverpool, right?
Yeah, I mean, 43 million well spent. I think he was a bit of a shock signing at first because you wouldn't think that a team like Liverpool, with the attacking players they have, would need another attacking player. But with Roberto Firmino kind of, I guess, having a bit of a slump over the past year or so, especially playing at Anfield, they needed someone to really, I guess, tighten up that attack. And I think they've gotten it with Diogo Jota. He scored a Champions League hat trick yesterday, which is huge. That's not something that a lot of players can say. And I believe, I mean, that would have been his only his second game ever in the Champions League, because Wolves have never qualified. So I think it was a really good signing from Liverpool. Kind of wish United had pulled a signing like that.
Gotcha. Okay. Another storyline, Sergio Ramos, obviously another really good performance for Real Madrid. Nick, what were your thoughts on Ramos? And do you think, in your opinion, is he the greatest center back of all time?
To be honest, seeing his last game, scoring his 100th goal for Real Madrid, I think if you have a player that's versatile and is able to score, especially as a center back, I think that just shows a lot about his game and his grit and his winning mentality. And although we've seen all these headlines about him being very aggressive, injuring people, being a dirty center back, honestly, I think he is one of the greatest center backs of all time.
Okay, interesting. And yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I think his performances have been really well, and I think his we'll say attacking prowess for a center back is kind of underappreciated, and that's something that's difficult to find in a position like that. Speaking of all-time greats, Lionel Messi, obviously one of the greatest players to ever step foot on earth. Thaddeus, is his decline, is that in the making right now? Is he regressing? Is he moving backwards? Are we seeing the end of Messi as a perennial all-time great year to year?
Honestly, I think we are. He hasn't scored a goal in open play in, I think, almost 9 games, if not 9 games now. And I mean, that really says something about how dominant he is now. I mean, if you watch him, he still is like a great player, undeniably, like the best player in the field. But if you can't pull in those results, I don't know if you can still like be considered like the best in the world or one of the best in the world right now, because he's not scoring enough. He's not assisting enough. He's playing, I mean, very well, but in terms of like how Messi plays and how we expect Messi to play, he's been like horrible almost.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's really unfortunate to see kind of the obviously Cristiano Ronaldo's on the decline, Messi kind of starting to roll down the hill in a sense, and it's really the end of an era. And before we go now, I know we touched on this earlier in a previous segment, but I'd like to go through your favorites for the Champions League aside from Bayern one more time. Thaddeus, who's your pick besides Bayern?
I don't honestly. I feel like it's too early to tell. I think like teams I would want to see, and I genuinely could see winning, are like a Man U, similar to like Tottenham getting to the final that year. Just like I could see Rashford really, really coming through as he already has, or I could see someone like, um, I mean Dortmund. I could see them doing very well. They for sure have the talent. So I don't know. I think it's way too early to predict. We haven't seen enough from anyone yet. So
Okay, interesting. And Dortmund obviously has to turn around their performances in the group stage to make it to get in that position. I'll pose that question to you, Austin. If you had to pick a favorite for the Champions League right now, aside from Bayern, who would it be?
Well, firstly, Thad, I appreciate that you think that United are so good as to make it to the final. I really appreciate that. Um, I think probably my two favorites at this point are either Man City or Liverpool. They've really dominated in their group, and it hurts me to say that Liverpool will make it to another final, but they've, especially I guess as their performance yesterday has shown, they've just played so well. I mean, they've had a bit of a struggle in the league, but now they're back up into first place. I just think the signing of Diogo Jota has added such another level of class to that attacking, that front three. So I think they really have a good, solid shot at making it to the final.
So Liverpool, if they were to win this, would be winners 2 out of the last 3 Champions League seasons, if I have that correct, if my memory is not wrong. And Nick, finally, I'll pose that question to you. Your favorite aside from Bayern?
Honestly, I'd have to agree with Austin here. I think Liverpool, if they just tighten up their defense, that they have a very good shot of making it. I mean, with the front two before the new signing, with Mane and Mo Salah producing most of the team's goals, and then just adding this one more signing to the front three, I mean, I think they have a really, really good shot.
Interesting. So we got a consensus here. It's either Bayern or one of the English teams, whether that be City, United, or Liverpool, and Liverpool seems to be the one that sticks out. And that'll be enough for our soccer segment today. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.
All right, as we segue into our last segment here, I'm joined by Leon and Alex. We're going to talk some college football, and we're heading into week 10 here of the season. The headline, obviously, Clemson will be facing Notre Dame, a team who's contending for the last playoff spot. Without their star quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, who has contracted the coronavirus, it'll be his second straight week not playing. Leon, how are their chances this weekend without him?
I believe it's a guaranteed win. DJ is really good, 5-star recruit, I believe, coming out of high school, and he looked good. He looked good last week. The defense didn't look really good, but he looked good. He had 342 yards, 2 touchdowns. I don't think it'll be a problem this week. I believe Clemson should easily manhandle Notre Dame.
Alex, how do you think DJ Uigale, sorry, I definitely said his name wrong, but how do you think he steps in and, kind of fills the shoes of Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah, it's like the second coming of Tua Tagovailoa. We've got DJ Uiagalelei or whatever.
It might be.
Yeah. Uiagalelei is a monster. I mean, I think he's like 6'3", 250 pounds. He definitely is a good Trevor Lawrence comparison. He's a big dude, can run the ball, got a great arm. And this will be interesting to watch because, Clemson got off to a really slow start against Boston College, which is Boston College. They're not very good. And ended up winning by like 6 points or something like that. And so Notre Dame, a much better team. They got I think like a 29 game home winning streak or something like that, or they're like 29-1 at home in the last couple seasons. So it'll be in South Bend. Obviously not the same environment, but still a tough place to go and play. And so I think that's probably the matchup of the week right here is Notre Dame Clemson. And a Notre Dame upset really shakes up the playoff picture. So I think it'll be interesting to watch. And I'll say Clemson, but I think it'll be close.
And speaking of that playoff picture, obviously everyone's kind of assuming here that Ohio State, Clemson, and Alabama take those 3 spots, assuming they win out, or even if Clemson loses this weekend, because the college football playoff committee is going to consider the fact that Trevor Lawrence obviously did not play, that Clemson probably still gets into playoffs. Alex, who do you think gets that 4th spot outside of those 3?
Yeah, so this upcoming Clemson Notre Dame matchup is a big one for a number of reasons. I think Clemson, we can all agree, is kind of a shoo-in. I think even if they lose to Notre Dame, they'll get in. And so if Notre Dame wins this game and then wins out, I think Notre Dame gets that 4th spot. However, assuming all Clemson, all those big 3 teams, Clemson, Alabama, and Ohio State, they win out, I think it's really up to one of the teams in the SEC or Pac-12, Oregon. And so I think if I had to bet, I'd say it could be Oregon, it could be Texas A&M, or it could be Georgia. Those would be my 3 picks for that final spot, assuming all 3 teams win out.
All right, and then let's go back to week 9. Oklahoma State with a big choke. What stood out to you in that game?
Yeah, Texas looked really impressive. Joseph Osai was insane. He's looking like a really good prospect out of Texas, defensive lineman. He had he had 12 tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 3 sacks, a forced fumble. He was a monster in that game, terrorized Oklahoma State all game long. Texas looked really impressive. I think it's more, it wasn't necessarily a choking on Oklahoma State's part. I thought Texas just looked like the better team watching that one. And this game pretty much eliminates the Big 12 from the playoff. I don't see a Big 12 team getting in now that Oklahoma State's done.
All right, and my last question here. Ohio State had a big win against Penn State. Alex, what's that out there?
Yeah, Justin Fields looks great. I think he's probably considered the number 2 quarterback in the country, but I think even with that ranking, he's still an underappreciated guy. He's really talented, can throw the football really well. He's a great runner too. He's mobile. He's smart. I think I said this at the beginning of the season. I think he's the best quarterback in the nation. And this season kind of rides Ohio State's chances at a title ride on Justin Fields. And so I think if he's healthy, I think they got a real shot to pull in a title for Columbus, Ohio this year.
All right, that wraps up the college football segment as well as our 4th episode of the E.O. Smith Sports Talk podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk next week. See you, boys.
This podcast was edited by Gabe Aguero.